It is now my great pleasure to introduce Steve Lipstein, who will deliver the Bernard A. Edelstein Memorial Lecture. When we were discussing who to select to speak to the community this year, we quickly agreed that Steve was the natural choice. Many of us know him best for his personal story as a member of our local Jewish community, but he has become a leading architect of our regional story as well. As President and Chief Executive Officer of BJC Healthcare since 1999, Steve oversees one of the nation's largest healthcare organizations. In addition, he serves on the Board of Trustees at Washington University, on the Washington University School of Medicine National Council, and is the chair of the Institute of Public Health National Advisory Council. In 2013, Steve was named St. Louis Citizen of the Year. Need I say more? Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Stephen Lipstein.
I'm afraid to touch this microphone. Amy, Matthew, if I can't be a lion tamer, I want to go up to be just like you. Congratulations. When Patty and Andrew asked if I would speak this evening and tell my Jewish story, I was taken aback. People ask me to speak about many topics, mostly healthcare related, but nobody has ever asked me to tell my Jewish story before. Perhaps mine has a slightly different twist, as it is attached to the person who currently serves as the president of BJC Healthcare, and BJC is a prominent St. Louis institution with 12 hospitals and 26,000 employees, including, perhaps especially tonight, Barnes Jewish Hospital. So I met with Andrew, and we talked about what I might speak about this evening. He recounted to me that former Federation Board Chair Michael Litwack once put a puzzling question before him. Why be Jewish? So I took that question home and repeated it to my wife, Susan. Why be Jewish? She pointed out that the question really doesn't pertain to me. Why? Because somewhere along my life's journey of 58 years, I began to love being Jewish. It isn't a decision I made at some point in time to be reasoned or explained. It just is. Now, to be sure, as a child, even as a young adult, I never proclaimed or shouted out loud or admitted to my parents that I loved being Jewish. Certainly, when Dad woke us up on Sunday morning to take us to Sunday school, I did not bounce out of bed and yell, "Yippee, I get to go to Sunday school." I didn't much like Hebrew school, and confirmation classes were not on the highlight reel either. But from consecration to confirmation, with bar mitzvah in between, Beth Emeth congregation in Wilmington, Delaware, with Rabbi Drews, Rabbi Shore, and Rabbi Grumbacher, is a part of my roots. Rabbi Grumbacher presided at our wedding and somehow has tracked me down over the years via RNN, the Rabbi News Network, to see how I was doing after my parents and my brother passed away. So when did I start to love being Jewish? As with many love affairs, it started before I knew it was even happening. I love being Jewish with my Zaydo. That's what we used to call him, Zaydo. Especially after Bubby died and he came to live with us. Zaydo was my best friend in junior high school. All of my friends, most of whom weren't Jewish, used to call him Zaydo too. One Zaydo story is worth telling. He was the patriarch on my mom's side of the family. He had two brothers, Uncle Mickey and Uncle Murray, and one sister, my Aunt Sarah, who was the godmother to all three of our children. My Aunt Sarah, Zaydo's sister, hosted an annual Passover Seder for her three brothers and all of their families. We are talking upwards of 50 people in a small row house on Tulpehocken Street in Philadelphia. And as the family elder, Zaydo ran the Seder. Everybody would complain that the Seder, under Zaydo's leadership, was always out of control and would go on for hours while everybody grew hungry and tired. You see, Zaydo allowed every child who wanted to recite or sing the four questions, and every child to serve as whichever one of the four sons would suit their fancy. We did the Seder and the songs in English and in Hebrew. Needless to say, it was a long and exhausting evening. Zato didn't seem to mind at all. He loved those Seders, and why not? He was surrounded by the people he loved, and they were surrounded by the people they loved. And so was I. Being Jewish gives you many opportunities to be surrounded by the people you love. Maybe that's why I started to love being Jewish. By the way, someday I hope to trade in my CEO title for a Zato title. My children didn't think that was very subtle. I love being Jewish with my mom and dad. Earlier this year at the award ceremony for the St. Louis Citizen of the Year, I was able to share a few stories about my mom and dad, uniquely Jewish stories. I shared with the audience that day that moms and dad stories are actually my stories as well, as their stories live on inside of me. One of my memories of early childhood is when Dad would come into my bedroom on Sunday evenings and place 5 quarters on my dresser and then top them off with 5 nickels, 30 cents for each of the next 5 days to cover my lunch money at River Road Elementary School. At the end of the row of 5 quarters and 5 nickels, he placed a dime. That was for Karen and me at Sunday school. A small amount, I know, but a lifelong lesson in setting aside some money after you cover the necessities of life to share with others less fortunate. Charity, tzedakah. Mom was president of almost every Jewish philanthropy in Wilmington, Delaware. Federation Women's Division, Hadassah, and the Jewish Community Center. Mom would take us to help out in soup kitchens on Christmas Day, because in Mom's view, that's what Jewish kids are supposed to do on Christmas Day. Mom would take my sister Carol and me up and down Wyndham Road, door to door, asking our neighbors to donate to everything. The Heart Association, the Cancer Society, UNICEF. Mom's example taught us to be active and give back to our community and to our congregation. Dad's and Mom's example taught us the importance of active citizenship. Soon after I came to work for BJC, I met Russ Carnahan, who worked for BJC at the time. On a visit to Washington, D.C. with Russ, we met with his mom. Only his mom was Missouri's junior Senator Jean Carnahan. Senator Mom arranged for us to have lunch in the Senate dining room. While we are eating, in walks Joe Biden, at that time a senator from my home state. I went up to him and said, "You don't know me, but my name is Steve Lipstein, and I'm from Wilmington." Senator Biden quickly replied, "Your dad is Lenny Lipstein. Your dad probably wrote me more letters than any of my other constituents." Dad died in 2000, and I can only imagine what he would say if he knew that Joe Biden is now the Vice President of the United States. Mom passed away in March of 2008 at the height of the big primary battle between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. In the weeks before she died, she told my brothers, sister, and me that she wanted contributions in her memory to go to Hillary.com. Mom wanted to see a Democrat and a woman elected president, and having witnessed racial tension in America, she was absolutely certain we would never elect a black man as our president. These stories are important lessons from Mom and Dad. Democrat or Republican or neither, our faith and our Jewish heritage demand active citizenship in the form of community or federation or congregation or advocacy for Israel and our fellow Jews around the world. As little as 10 years ago, my mom and dad would have thought you absolutely nuts to think that the tiny state of Delaware could be the home state of the vice president and that an African American is the president of the United States. Things can change, and active citizens make change happen. Perhaps this is why I love being Jewish. Being Jewish encourages me to be an active member of this community, our adopted hometown of St. Louis, to be an engaged citizen in our national and local discourse as it concerns the disadvantaged and vulnerable among us, to do my part in various fundraising causes, be they Jewish-related or not. They all meet the definition of tzedakah. One last mom and dad story. As you may know, the CEO of BJC gets his salary published in the newspaper every year. On the day of one such publication, I attended a dinner for St. Louis Children's Hospital and was seated next to Senator Claire McCaskill. She asked me about my salary, more specifically what I thought about the quantity of dollars involved. I shared with Senator McCaskill that were my father alive, he would think that I am way overpaid and that I should give a goodly amount of my income to charity. My mother, however, would think and tell her quite forcefully, and not at all defensively, that her number 3 son is worth every penny, and that he should give a goodly amount of his income to charity. Now, I realize that this story likely means I may get solicited for Federation before I leave this evening. And as Federation solicitors extraordinaire themselves, that would make my mom and dad smile. I love being Jewish with my brothers and sister. By now, you likely have an image in your minds that my brothers David and Bruce and my sister Carol and I have lots of stories to tell about our lives together and with each other and with mom and dad. We have all gone in different directions, and none of us live in Wilmington. David and Bruce lived in the DC area, and just recently, David and his wife retired to Bethany Beach in Delaware. Carol and her husband, Don, live in the Chicago area. What brings us together? Being Jewish and baseball. A great combination in St. Louis. That's right, baseball. My dad loved baseball, and he taught all of us to keep score as he was teaching us to read. For 13 years now, we have traveled to a different city each summer, to a different ballpark, to go to a baseball game and celebrate a family gathering we invented to honor our dad. And we partake of a special dinner at a local restaurant the night before the baseball game to honor mom. After all, what better way to honor a Jewish mother than gathering together for a special family meal? This year, the In Mom's Honor dinner was at Jack Stack, a famous barbecue restaurant in Kansas City the night before the Royals played the Angels. I got to see Albert Pujols and David Freese play again. In a city like St. Louis, finding a way to love being Jewish and love baseball is a natural. Before he died, I got to meet Stan Musial. My dad would have loved that. And David is coming to St. Louis next month for Yom Kippur, and perhaps to see the Cardinals in the postseason. Hey, whatever it takes. I love being Jewish with my wife and children. Susan and I met and married in Baltimore when we were both working at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Rabbi Grumbacher from Beth Emeth in Wilmington traveled to Baltimore to officiate at our ceremony at Westminster Hall, a deconsecrated church that happens to be the resting place of Edgar Allan Poe, making the locale uniquely Baltimore. Along my professional pathway, we have lived in Baltimore, where our 3 children, Greg, Ross, and Kate, were born, and where we joined our first congregation as a family, Temple Emmanuel. And then we moved to Chicago, where Greg and Ross were bar mitzvahed, and I first encountered Midwestern allergies. And then we moved to Chicago, where Greg and Ross were bar mitzvahed, and we joined our second congregation, Oak Park Temple. And then here to St. Louis, where Kate was bat mitzvahed, after we joined Congregation Sher Emeth, and where all 3 of our children were confirmed. Another reason we love being Jewish? It's portable. It goes everywhere we go. Susan and I have made a Jewish home for our family in each place where we have lived, celebrating the festivals and the holidays and many life cycle events. Our son Greg is married to Laura, and they wed in New Orleans. Rabbi Andrea Goldstein from Sher Emeth was gracious and portable and presided at a uniquely Jewish Cajun wedding, bringing together Greg's Jewish heritage and traditions with Laura's New Orleans roots and her family's Indian heritage. India is the birthplace of her grandfather. And our soon-to-be daughter-in-law, Carolina, who will marry our son Ross next July, was born in Argentina. The Lipsteins have gone global. We have become an international conglomerate. Importantly, we love being Jewish with our daughters-in-law who are not Jewish, and with our many friends around the country also who are not Jewish. We welcome them into our family. They participate in our traditions, and we in theirs. They celebrate with us. They mourn with us. They value what we think and what we believe as we value their faiths and traditions, different though they may be. We try to teach our children to love being Jewish as we do. And at the same time, we taught them to be welcoming, accepting, and tolerant of people of different races, different nationalities, and different faiths. A dear friend of ours, Rich McClure, who is not Jewish, who believes deeply in a Christian faith, a gentle man among Gentiles, knows I am speaking this evening on this topic. To my list, he adds what he loves about the Jewish community. He tells me, "The Jewish heritage is about a rich sense of identity that has survived inexplicable persecution, suspicion, and violence. This Jewish heritage fosters a passionate commitment to deeply held principles of faith and community that sets an example for the rest of us. The Jewish community has chosen, by their courage, sense of destiny, and unity, to make foundational contributions to social justice, education, and social investment." I'm glad he sent these words to share with you tonight. I could not have said it any better. And so Susan and I rejoice in the company of our family and friends. Rejoice may seem like an odd and corny word to describe the sentiment, and it isn't my word. It comes from a favorite prayer of mine that I read over and over again during the afternoon services of Yom Kippur. We rejoice in the love of fathers and mothers who have nurtured our lives, with whose blessing we have gone forth to our own work in the world. We rejoice in the love of children who bless our homes, whose eager minds and hearts are the promise of tomorrow. We rejoice in friends who share our sorrows and joys and in the fullness of abundant life. Which brings me to my last story of the evening, the story about why I love being Jewish at work, at my job as a hospital administrator, in my travels from Emory University Hospital to Massachusetts General Hospital, to Johns Hopkins Hospital, to the University of Chicago hospitals, and here to all the hospitals of BJC Healthcare, perhaps especially this evening, Barnes Jewish Hospital. I have been working in a hospital since I was 18 years old, and I am now 58. That's 40 years. Sometimes when Susan and I have an unscheduled Friday evening and we can make the timing work, we make our way to Sher Emeth for Shabbat services. Shabbat dinner is at Bristol's afterwards, where we substitute the biscuits for the challah. Now, I am not a deeply religious observant Jew, but some of the liturgy and a few special prayers strike a chord with me, the Mishabera most of all. Bless those in need of healing with the spirit of refuah. Rabbi, I have not a clue what refuah means, but because I don't know any Hebrew, I choose to mean that this word means compassion. Bless those in need of healing with the spirit of compassion, for the renewal of body and the renewal of spirit, that their health may be restored and their strength may be revived. This prayer describes my life's work, important work that I think of as a high calling to service, wholly consistent with my Judaism. Now, if I take the prayer literally, I can argue that we who work in the health professions are really incapable of renewing the human anatomy. We all age and we all die. Our bodies simply aren't renewable. And then I look at how far we've come in my short time on this earth. We can now renew or replace your knees, your hips, your elbows, your shoulders. We can rebuild your spine. Into your heart, we can replace valves and insert catheters and pacemakers and stents and defibrillators. We can transplant your kidneys and your lungs and your heart and your liver. Not too long ago, a stage 3 or 4 cancer diagnosis meant almost certain and immediate death. We now have advanced chemotherapy treatments, radiation and proton beam therapy, all with the potential to relieve human suffering and to extend human life. So the next time you think about what a hospital administrator does for a living, or you think of the many people who work for and with BJC Healthcare, think about those of us who work in the health professions as assisting in the Lord's work, to bless those in need of healing with the spirit of refuah, for the renewal of body and the renewal of spirit, that their health may be restored and their strength revived. So there it is, my Jewish story, or at least the 20-minute version, my time allotted for this evening. As we part company, my hope for you as we welcome this High Holy Day season is that you love being Jewish as much as I do, and that being Jewish brings special meaning to your life. Thank you for listening. L'shana Tova.